Hello everyone, you're welcome to Delaware Studios. We'll be talking about intent. We'll be talking specifically about the explicit intent. If time permits, we'll talk about the implicit. Now, intents are the messaging system by which one activity is able to launch another activity. An activity can, for example, issue an intent to request the launch of another activity contained within the same application. Intent also, however, it goes beyond this concept by allowing an activity to request the services of any other appropriately registered activity on the device for which permissions are configured. Look, for example, look just to give an just look an instance. There's an activity contained within an application that requires a web page to be loaded and displayed to the user, rather than the application having to contain a second activity to perform this task. The code can simply send an intent to the Android runtime requesting the services of any activity that has registered the ability to display a web page. The runtime system will match the request to available activities on the device and either launch the activity that matches or, in the event of multiple matches, allow the user to decide which activity to use. Instead, also allow for the transfer of data from the sending activity to the receiving activity in the previously outlined scenario that we talked about, which we use an example. The sending activity would need to send the URL of the web page to the display to the second activity. No, the receiving activity may also be configured to return result data to the sending activity when the required tasks are completed. So we'll be looking vividly into our explicit intent. So I move straight to my Android Studios, which I have my codes written, but I will explain in total on how we actually come about all this. Explicit intent. An explicit intent requires the launch of a specific activity by referencing the component name, which is actually the Java class name of the target activity. This approach is most common when launching an activity residing in the same application as the sending activity. Now, since the Java class is known to an explicit intent is issued by creating a new instance of the intent class, passing through the activity context and the component name of the activity to be launched. A call is then made to the start activity method, passing through the instance object as an argument, no, which is quite understandable. So this is going to take us straight to our Android manifest. Now, if we should look vividly, we have our Java code for the activity A, which is the first activity, and also for activity B, which is the second one. Now, the same thing applies to our layout. We have the layout A, which is the first layout of the first activity A, and the layout B, which is the second layout of the activity B. Now, our Android manifest, that is where we're going to. In the Android manifest, now when using an intent to launch other activities within the same application, it is essential that those activities be listed in the Android manifest. Now, we're going to we are going to actually specify the activity that we need for the activities that will be called in our manifest. Our manifest looks like this with our package name, the application tag, which holds the Android allow backup, which is true, the icon, which is the icon of the application, the label, which is the explicit content, that's the name of the app, the theme, we give it the style of app theme, the default theme, the name of the first activity is called activity A, and this activity A is the launcher, that is the main activity of this particular app. Now, if you should look beneath it, we have our intent filter, which is actually telling us the launcher, that is the start activity. When you launch the application, which activity starts first. That's what that means. Now, the second activity calling, which is activity B, must be specified, which is right specified with this chunk of code here. The second activity tag, which we will mention with an Android name called activity B and the Android label called activity B. That's the second activity. We must specify it in our Android manifest for it to actually link to the instance we're talking about. Now, as no as we talked earlier on, there's no way that the data can be returned to the first activity. No, the we, for this to be achieved by launching activity B as a sub activity of activity A. An activity is started as a sub activity by starting the instance with a call to the start activity of B. Now, this takes us really, really, really down memory lane to our layout files, which we'll be looking vividly. We'll have to look at how our user interface of the two activities will actually be looking like. So, user interface for activity A will consist of a relative layout view. Let's go straight to our layout. It consists of a relative layout view as you are looking at it. And in the relative layout view, there's an edit text, which is just a plain text. There's a text view. There's a text view, which we are seeing presently, and there's an edit text, which you are also seeing presently, and a button view named edit text. That is what you are actually seeing at this moment. So let me quickly do a rundown of how we actually constructed this. This is a relative layout which is wrapping into the most flexible layout of Android, and we specify a text view with a layout width of wrap content and the height of wrap content, and the text is large, and the ID of the text view is actually text view 1. We have the edit text, which is just giving us a room for us to or to write or to put a value. We have the layout with 20 dp. We have the layout height, which is wrap content, you know, and we are actually specifying that it should be above, which is the layout above the ID text view one. So let's quickly look at what text view one is. Text view one is actually the text view. So the edit text is going to be above the text view. That is what that signifies. Now we have a button with a layout width of wrap content, with an Android layout height of wrap content as well, with a tag on it which is called ask question. It has an ID, which is called a button one, and the is going to sit below the text view one. No, so that is just what that signifies. That is our first layout of activity A. Now let's move to the layout of activity B, which should be a slightly similar. We are in it. It's also having a relative layout as well. It has a button with the text called answer questions. But there is one particular thing that we should put into consideration, which is the Android on click. Now on click on that button, what should happen? That is the meaning. On click of the button called answer question, what should be called? Is it an on click listener or an on click view? On click view. So we have a button which has a button one as an ID, and a text view which has a text view one two as an ID, and it has a margin top which is going to actually give it a space and in the top from one element to the other. That is what that is doing. We have the addictive, which is just like is similar to the layout of our activity A. Now we run straight down to our Java code, which is actually going to do the magic for us. That is where we specify the, the rest of the application. We've talked about our manifest, which was talking about how how we where we employ when we had our our activity as an activity our activity B, which was actually specified as a sub activity. Now let's move down to our Java class activity A. we'll be talking a little bit about that. The objective for activity A is to create and start an intent. That is the objective of this class you are gazing through right now, is to create and start an intent. When the user touches the ask question button, something should happen. As part of the intent creation process, a question string entered by the user into the edit text view will be added to the intent object as a key value pair. When the user interface layout was created for activity A, the button object was configured to call a method named onClick, which I told you earlier. When clicked by the user, this method now needs to be added to activity A class activity A Java. No, when we actually call that button, which was actually specified in our XML. Now let's take a rundown on how this our Java code actually is. So we create a class called activity A, which is extending action bar activity. There's a private static final integer which we created, which has a static 105. On our own create, we have to set a content view, which is actually calling the layout of our activity A. So this is the particular aspect we want to talk about, which is the on-click. The on-click is actually going to call the ID of what we assign an on-click to, which is the button. Now, on the click of that button, there is an intent attached to it. That intent is actually calling another activity, which is activity B. You know, it's actually calling another activity. And not only doing that, it's going to do a sort of passing the text entered from activity A down to activity B. That is why we created an edit text layout, which is going to actually hold the value of the edit text. You know, when we initialize it, we call the ID of the edit text, and it's going to be on a string. And if not a string, we convert it to string. That is what the next line of code is actually doing, which I'm actually highlighting at the moment. This code we actually convert the value of the edit text either to a string. And now look at what they put extra. There is a method called put extra. This method is actually going to put the edit text, the value of the edit text into the string called q string, you know, which is going to actually assign it, and it's going to start an activity for result. We have an activity for result, we have a start activity. An activity for result, definitely something there's something which is gonna be returned. Now it's from activity A to activity B. Definitely something will be returned from activity B to A. This is just like an handshake from one activity to the other. Now the on activity result, that is what is being called at the activity result, which is going to be a return of data. It's using an if statement. If result code is equal to result code, and if result code is equal to result, okay, do this. Send a text view which is going to hold the text view of activity B, which is going to now call it back, which is going to attach the same process we did for the first one. We're going to get extract, we're going to get string, and it's going to return data. They are returning data back to the next activity. That's activity A is giving a handshake of data to activity B, while activity B2 is going to give a handshake of data to activity A. That is just what the code is going to do. So now let's move down to our activity B, and let's see what is actually happening there. So our activity B is just going to do exactly the same. Now the activity B is being launched from activity A. And now the next step for us is to extract the string data value included in the intent and assign it to the text view object in the activity B user interface. This is what some other code which is going to be the on create that we've done. In order for activity B to be able to return data to activity A, activity B must be started as a sub activity of activity B. This means that the call to start activity in the activity A on click method needs to be replaced with a call to start activity for results, which we've actually done. Now let's take a brush through on how the code of activity B goes. This is also calling our create and setting a content view, which is actually specifying the layout of activity B. There's a bundle extras which is getting narrated and calling a get extras on it, which is also doing just the same process of the first activity. Let's we initialize the string, call it a quiz string, we send an extract and we get the string of what is being specified in activity B. We attach it to our text view and set it as a text. Now on click, we'll finish it with a finish method. So what the finish method is actually specifying is what is highlighted here is calling an instance, an instance class, which is actually having an edit text one initializing the object of edit text. We call a find view by ID, which is the ID of the edit text of activity B. Now we are returning a string, you know, which is going to actually return this back to activity A on a button click. That is just what the code is gonna do. So let's take a quickly brush through and run it and let's see what I've been explaining earlier. You can get this code from my GitHub account, which is actually showing on your screen. Please feel free to look at it and download it and use it further in your application. So let's do a run through. Let's run it and let's see how the code actually emulates. So I click on my run button to have a run of it. So my Gradle console is actually opened by my left, by my right button, which is going to tell me the life cycle of my run or of my build of me building the application. So the configuration on demand is an incubating feature. So let's be patient and let's see how it goes. Actually coming up, compiling, successfully building. Now it gives me an ability to pick the device that's actually running on the device available for launching of the application. Now I have my Genymotion Google Galaxy Lens 4.3 2018, 18, which is actually online. So I click my OK. This is my Google Nexus, waiting for the application to be launched. Yeah, that's the application with the name called Explicit Insight. Now, in my user interface, I have an edit text which I'll be talking earlier. I have a text view which is called large text, and I have a button click and a button called ask question. Now, this button is trying to tell me ask a question. Now, to ask my question, I want to send the question to my next instance to get an answer. So let me send the question. What is your college name? That is my question. I click on my ask button. This takes me to the next instance. That was just a scenario I was trying to explain earlier. You know, saying is better believing. Now it takes me to my next instance. Passing the data, passing the value. What is your college name? Across to the next instance. Now, with a button called answer questions, this is just common sense. I'm going to answer the question, which is Harvard, you know, the city, Harvard. Harvard should be the R. Spelling check, Harvard University. also answer my question. It takes me backward to my calling activity by giving me the answer Harvard University. So be feel free to use this code. You can still tweak it to get more, more value from it or to use it better than even the way I enumerated it. Thank you for listening. But before I go, please enable or try as much as possible to subscribe to my channel. I have a lot of tutorials on Android applications and on Java and probably PHP will be coming up frequently too. Subscribe to my channel and keep in touch with me. Thank you very, very much for listening. You can as well get the code from the GitHub account as I've said, which is actually shown on your screen again. Thank you very much for listening. Have a wonderful time.